They're not who you think. Most people have no idea they're being read every day. They control their words, polish their tone, perfect their smiles, yet their truth still slips through. Carl Jung understood this long before it became popular psychology. People don't hide who they are, they leak it, in nervous laughs, in quick nods of agreement, in the tension behind a smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes. They don't even realize they're confessing. That's what this video is about. Not reading people's words, but reading their patterns, projections, and contradictions. We'll explore how the persona they perform, the shadow they project, and the behaviors they repeat are all telling you exactly what they don't want you to see. You don't need to guess anymore. Jung gave us the map, and the moment you see it, you can't unsee it. Their reactions become roadmaps, their judgments become mirrors, and their silence. That's often the loudest thing in the room. If you've ever felt like someone was lying to you but couldn't explain why, this will give you the language you were missing. If this already sounds like something you felt but couldn't put into words, subscribe to the channel and stay with me. You're about to learn how to read what people are really saying without them ever opening their mouth. They'll tell you what they do, they'll tell you what they like, but they rarely tell you who they are. That's because most people don't actually know. They're not lying to you. They're living through a role. Carl Jung called this the persona, the mask you create to survive in the world. It's not evil, it's necessary, but when someone becomes the mask, they forget what they're hiding underneath. And you'll know it when their reactions don't match their words. When someone smiles while saying something painful, when they say no problem but tighten their jaw, when their tone is cheerful but their eyes beg for help. That's not a mood. That's the mask slipping. You'll see it most clearly in everyday conversations. The co-worker who agrees with everything, even when it's wrong. The friend who plays peacemaker in every argument, no matter how much it costs them. The partner who avoids conflict by laughing things off. What looks like kindness is often fear. What sounds like ease is often exhaustion. These people aren't weak, they're skilled in survival. But survival isn't the same as connection, and that's what they've lost. So pay attention to the mismatch. The too fast yes, the rehearsed politeness, the hollow laugh. That's the persona at work. Jung warned that the persona becomes dangerous when we forget it's a performance. When someone is praised for being so strong, they may become unable to admit weakness. When they're known for being so easygoing, they'll start betraying themselves to maintain the label. That's why some people burn out silently. Their role won't allow them to ask for help, and their image becomes a trap. If you want to see someone clearly, ask, what part of them isn't allowed to exist in public? That's where their truth is hiding. Watch the body, not just the face. The eyes that glance away when a real question lands. The shoulders that drop too quickly in relief when the conversation shifts. The person who interrupts deep topics with jokes. That's not bad timing. That's emotional armor. And once you see these patterns, you'll start understanding people on a different level. They're not avoiding you. They're avoiding themselves. They've learned which parts of them get love and which ones get punished. The persona keeps them safe, but it also keeps them alone. And here's the twist. The more someone depends on their persona, the more exhausted they feel. That friend who's always cheerful might crash the moment they're alone. That leader who seems endlessly confident might spiral when they're not in control. The persona is a full-time job, and it pays in isolation. So if you've noticed someone who seems perfect, composed, emotionally invincible, don't admire the surface. Read what's missing. Because often, the more polished the mask, the more fragile the person behind it. You don't need to confront them. You need to notice them. When you witness someone's persona without demanding they stay in it, something softens. That's when real connection becomes possible. You become the one person who doesn't need them to perform, and that might be the safest moment they've had all year. Jung believed that healing begins with awareness, not exposure, not judgment, just seeing clearly. And that's exactly what this chapter gives you, the ability to see through performance and hear what's being silenced. If you've ever met someone and felt like something was off, but couldn't explain why, you weren't wrong. You were feeling the friction between their mask and their truth. And if you want to go deeper into understanding that divide, check the tools in the first comment. Now pause and ask yourself, who in your life seems okay, but feels like they're disappearing? Leave your answer below, and when you're ready, we'll move to the next layer, where people stop performing and start projecting. People reveal more when they're offended than when they're honest. That's where the shadow shows up. According to Carl Jung, the shadow is everything someone denies, represses, or is ashamed to admit exists within them. But it doesn't stay buried. It leaks in criticism, sarcasm, envy, and emotional overreactions. When someone lashes out over something small, mocks a trait in someone else, or constantly complains about behaviors they themselves embody, you're not seeing bad manners. You're seeing the unconscious exposed. Look closely at what someone can't tolerate in others. The man who shames people for being emotional is often terrified of his own feelings. The woman who criticizes others for seeking attention may feel invisible in her own life. The co-worker who calls everyone fake might be hiding behind a performance themselves. The shadow always reveals itself through projection. Jung warned, "We meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life." So when someone is obsessively judging, it's usually not about who they're attacking. It's about who they're afraid of becoming. This is why arguments escalate over small things, why people explode over minor inconveniences, why they attack what they secretly long for. The one who can't stand weakness may have never been allowed to show vulnerability. The one who rolls their eyes at joy may not remember what it feels like. The judgment isn't power, it's pain in costume. And once you learn to recognize it, people become transparent. They're not hiding truth, they're screaming it in disguise. You'll see it, especially in relationships. When someone gets defensive over harmless questions, when they mock your dreams, when they withdraw the moment things get emotional. These aren't random actions, they're protections. The shadow doesn't want to connect. It wants to control, avoid, dominate, or disappear. Because connection requires being seen. And that's the one thing the shadow fears. It was created to protect the parts of us that were once punished. But over time, it becomes the part that punishes others for getting too close. And yes, sometimes the shadow can be cruel, but that cruelty isn't always intentional, it's inherited. People repeat what protected them. If someone grew up mocked for being sensitive, they'll mock sensitivity in others. If they were punished for anger, they'll fear and attack any display of it. This doesn't excuse the behavior, but it does explain it. And when you understand the shadow, you stop taking everything personally. You start reading it like a confession. Here's how you spot it instantly. Listen to what someone fixates on. The friend who always calls others dramatic. The sibling who can't go 5 minutes without pointing out someone else's flaws. The co-worker who constantly highlights what's wrong with everyone else. These aren't just opinions, they're maps. They reveal exactly what that person is avoiding in themselves. So instead of being offended, get curious. What are they fighting? What part of themselves is too painful to admit? And the more unconscious the shadow, the louder it becomes. That's why you'll hear it in exaggeration. I never get jealous. I'm just brutally honest. I don't care what anyone thinks. These statements are not facts, they're shields. When someone has to declare something repeatedly, it usually means the opposite is true. They're not trying to deceive you. They're trying to convince themselves, but their words can't silence their patterns, and that's what gives them away. So now ask yourself, who do you know that reacts too strongly to small things? Who fixates on flaws, avoids depth, or mocks what they don't understand? Those aren't character traits, they're alarm bells. And if you want to explore what those reactions truly reveal, check the first comment. We've added resources that dig deeper into projection and shadow behavior. Then reflect for a moment. What do you find hardest to tolerate in others? The answer might be pointing straight to your own shadow. Leave a comment if you're ready to face it. When you're ready, we'll go one layer deeper, where patterns stop being habits and start becoming confessions. Some people don't talk about their past, but you can still hear it. In their routines, in their defenses, in the way they love, avoid, interrupt, overwork, or disappear. They may not remember what happened to them, but their nervous system does. Carl Jung believed that our unconscious mind keeps repeating what the conscious mind refuses to heal. That's why you'll see someone date the same type of partner over and over. That's why they sabotage every good opportunity. That's why they chase people who never stay. It's not random, it's reenactment. Behavior is biography. And if you look closely, you'll see that every repeated pattern is a story being told without words. The man who never lets anyone in probably had to earn love with silence. The woman who overgives until she breaks likely learned early that being needed was safer than being herself. The friend who vanishes the moment things get real may have never seen what healthy closeness looks like. These aren't flaws, they're scripts. Old protection strategies that outlived their danger but stayed behind as habits. You don't need a psychology degree to read someone's life. Just observe what happens on repeat. Do they always apologize even when they're not wrong? Do they change their voice depending on who's in the room? Do they choose people who mistreat them and call it love? These aren't just choices, they're echoes. They're the unconscious mind replaying familiar pain in hopes that this time maybe the ending will be different. But it won't be, until they see the loop. This is how you read someone without needing them to open up. Watch the tension when they're given a compliment, the way they shut down when they're asked how they feel, the constant need to explain themselves. These are not coincidences, these are tells. And the clearer they become, the more compassion you gain, not just for others but for yourself. Because the same way you're reading them, you'll start recognizing yourself. And that's where everything shifts. Jung called this the beginning of individuation. The moment you stop blaming the world and start recognizing your own reflection in it. When someone acts out the same pain again and again, they're not stubborn. They're stuck in a pattern their body thinks is safe. But what feels safe isn't always what heals. And unless they confront the original wound, they'll keep building their life around fear, never knowing why it all keeps collapsing. Here's what to watch for. Extremes. Someone who never asks for help. Someone who always needs to be liked. Someone who disappears at the first sign of conflict. These behaviors seem small, but they're actually huge clues. They reveal what that person once had to survive and what they're still protecting. You won't get this information from a conversation. You'll get it by watching what repeats, what escalates, and what never seems to change. And if you're honest, you'll realize you do it too. You tell people you're fine when you're falling apart. You laugh things off to avoid saying what you need. You chase chaos because calm feels boring. These patterns aren't conscious, they're inherited, but once you spot them, they stop being fate. They become choice. And that's the moment you begin to change. So here's your task. Observe your life like you're watching someone else's movie. What scenes keep repeating? What characters keep showing up in different faces? And what wounds have you been writing into every chapter? In the first comment, we've included tools to help you track and interrupt the cycle. Then drop a comment. What pattern are you finally ready to break? Because the moment you name it, you stop being owned by it. They weren't just hiding from you. They were hiding from themselves. And now you can finally see it. That friend who always smiles but never shares. That partner who runs the moment things get real. That stranger who flinches at eye contact when the conversation turns honest. None of it is random. Now you know how to read it. The persona revealed itself in the mismatch between words and tension. The shadow exposed itself through judgment, control, and deflection. And the patterns, the ones that repeat like clockwork, confess the wound they never talked about. But what makes this powerful isn't just that you can read others, it's that you can finally read yourself. You've seen where you perform to avoid rejection. You've seen where you project what you can't accept. You've seen the loops you've been stuck in for years, disguised as personality. This isn't about control, it's about clarity. And once you see the mask, the projection, and the pattern, you never go back to sleep. Jung didn't give us formulas, he gave us mirrors. And now that you've looked into them, you're not just observing behavior, you're decoding survival. Behind every sharp comment is fear. Behind every overreaction is shame. Behind every "I'm fine" is a story screaming to be seen. And when you see that in others, you stop reacting. You start choosing who you trust, who you invite in, who you forgive, who you walk away from. So ask yourself, who in your life have you misread? Because you only listened to their words. And more importantly, which version of you have you been performing instead of living? Leave your answer in the comments. And if you're ready to go deeper, check the first comment. We've included tools to help you sharpen your perception and free the self you've hidden for far too long. Subscribe and turn on notifications. The real work starts now, and this time you'll finally see what's real.